And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Please stop using that phrase and talking about because you don't understand what you're saying. You're saying about yourself that, you know, hey, that's a terrible thing to be. It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought.
Did you catch that? The same hosts who were recently dismissing her with jokes and smug laughs are now forcing smiles for the cameras, acting like nothing's wrong. But Karoline isn't playing along. She's out for blood and ABC is feeling the heat. The timing couldn't be worse. Just a few episodes ago, Whoopi Joy and Sunny were mocking the lawsuit like it was some fringe conspiracy. Now, they're practically pleading for peace in front of a live audience. But Karoline isn't. Backing down, she's pressing harder with a fierce determination. Behind the scenes, it's absolute mayhem executives in a frenzy. Emergency meetings underway, lawyers on call, 24/7. The studio lights are shining, but the fear behind those polished smiles is shining brighter. And let's be honest, this isn't just about one legal battle. It's about what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the personalities who thrive on controversy suddenly find themselves in the hot seat.
Karoline Leavitt is the press secretary at the White House, doing a great job. Such a great job that the ladies of The View feel the green monster coming upon them. They really don't like this woman. She's a good communicator.
This is the story the mainstream media would rather keep buried, but not here. Let's dig in. Karoline Leavitt isn't just another name in the headlines, she's the White House press secretary, and she's owning that role with surgical precision. So much so, it's clearly rattling the women over at The View. That green-eyed jealousy, it's not subtle. You can feel the tension every time her name comes up. They can't stand her. Why? Because she's sharp, composed, and commands the room without ever raising her voice. But this wasn't just another chaotic episode of The View. This was the moment the storm hit hand. Not one of the hosts brought an umbrella when Karoline dropped her bombshell lawsuit $100 million on the table. The studio didn't flinch. Instead, it was all smug, smirks, fake laughs, and dripping sarcasm. They thought she was bluffing. Big mistake. Joy Behar, always quick with a low blow, dismissed the lawsuit like it was a bad comedy set. Just another PR stunt. She scoffed, brushing it off like it didn't matter. Another conservative crying for attention. Whoopi barely moved, slouched in her chair, rolling her eyes. "We've had worse," she muttered. "It'll be gone by next week." Spoiler, it wasn't. Then there was Sunny Hostin, The View's so-called legal expert, grinning like she already had the verdict. "This case has no legs," she smirked. "None. It'll be tossed before it even hits a courtroom." The audience laughed. The hosts laughed louder. Just another throwaway segment. Just another conservative swinging at the air. But here's what they didn't see coming.
The fact that his bond... Hold on. Sir.
What's
I have to stop you with the camera because I can see you. So do me a favor, don't pull it out again.
Karoline wasn't bluffing. Not even close. This wasn't about chasing headlines or going viral. This wasn't a stunt. She came armed with hard evidence, detailed timelines, and a legal team that didn't waste time on theatrics. They weren't there to make noise. They were making calculated moves. Quiet, strategic, and lethal. While the hosts kept smiling for the cameras, Karoline's team was already deep in the trenches, reviewing, dissecting, collecting. They weren't just watching one episode. They were combing through years of footage. Archived broadcasts, unaired segments, off-camera banter, internal emails, producer, notes. Nothing was off. Every smug joke, every throwaway insult, every behind-the-scenes comment that was never meant to surface. It was all being cataloged, logged, and cross-referenced. And that's when the mood inside ABC shifted. Fast, the legal department started circling like sharks, quiet at first. Then, unmistakable, emails started landing. Do you remember this segment? Were you present during this taping? Editors were given urgent instructions. Pull the raw footage, every camera angle, back it up immediately. That confident smirk on Sunny's face, gone, replaced by the realization that the punchline had just turned into a subpoena.
Democrats in the media are now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline Leavitt.
ABC's legal team was now knee-deep in the digital archives, digging through old hard drives. buried folders, and long-forgotten backup servers like they were hunting for gold. But what they found wasn't treasure, it was landmines. Because Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit wasn't built on a flubbed quote or a careless comment. This was about calculated character assassination, not accidental, not coincidental. It was orchestrated. This wasn't just defamation, it was a takedown scripted behind the scenes by the same people now dismissing her as too emotional. Then came the leak that turned everything upside down. Internal Slack messages from The View's production team surfaced, and they weren't just damaging, they were deliberate. One message read, "Joy should press her hard on the youth angle. Get her flustered early." Another, "Keep the audience engaged." Cut to reactions when she stutters. And then came the smoking gun, a handwritten note found in a producer's show. Planning notebook, let her dig her own grave. About Trump, she spiraled. That wasn't shady. That was surgical. Pre-meditted. This was no longer about what aired. It was about what was planned before the cameras ever rolled. Behind the scenes, it wasn't a talk show. It was a war room. And now, the laughter that once filled living rooms across America plays back in silence inside courtrooms, legal briefings, and panicked network meetings. The same clips that once earned cheers are now forensic evidence under a legal microscope. Karoline didn't raise her voice. No meltdown, no cryptic tweets, no media tours, just receipts gold, precise, and devastating. While ABC clung to its usual smugness, the machine Karoline set in motion moved with lethal silence. Because when the truth is on your side, you don't need to shout. You wait. And Karoline waited calm, collected as the pressure inside ABC built to a slow, blistering boil.
Have mocked him, they have shamed him, they have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November the 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the lies that they have spewed. These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
At first, it was all jokes and smirks. "We've dealt with worse," one ABC executive muttered during a Monday morning Zoom, barely glancing up from their coffee. That same executive canceling weekend plans by Thursday because by then, everything had flipped. The mood shifted fast from smug to shaky to full-blown panic. Weekly status updates turned into back-to-back crisis calls. Senior legal advisors were flown in overnight. Damage control wasn't just a department, it became the whole building. Editors were ordered to turn over everything. Emails, scripts, raw footage. Producers were caught off guard, grilled about episodes they barely remembered. Vacations were canceled. Meetings doubled. Sleep vanished. And the wildest part, Karoline's legal team hadn't even started discovery yet. They hadn't even cracked open the real playbook. That's when it finally hit ABC like a freight train. This was someone who came to bury them by the book. Then came discovery, the legal stage where both sides are forced to lay everything bare. No dodging, no hiding. During and after segments. Turn it over. Internal planning docs, Slack messages, HR complaints, editorial notes. One internal memo, dated 6 months before the lawsuit hit, raised the alarm. "I'm concerned." Recent interviews with younger conservative guests feel overly aggressive, borderline targeted. Another HR note spelled it out. There's a pattern of strategic tension creation. Unclear if it's personal bias or editorial direction. These weren't one-off complaints. They were warnings ignored like junk mail. Once discovery sank in, panic spread through ABC like wildfire. No one was safe. Not the interns fetching coffee. Not the junior staffers who once sat quietly in planning rooms. Now they were being pulled aside.
You know that you're walking into hostile territory, right?
Certainly do. And look, I think I'm well prepared for that. And I'm incredibly honored that President Trump has instilled confidence in me to speak on his behalf behind the White House podium. It's been an honor to have a front row seat to the greatest political comeback in history. And as you mentioned in your monologue, Sean, President Trump is putting together a brilliant cabinet of fantastic America First fighters, from Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who are going to cut the waste out of our federal bureaucracy, to Susie Wiles, who is going to serve as the first female chief of staff in history. Take that. Mark Cuban to Tom Homan. No one better to secure the border than him.
Some producers started calling lawyers quietly, just in case. A few staffers wiped old texts. Others jumped into group chats, scrambling to clean things up. But it was too little, too late. And through all the chaos, Karoline's camp stayed. Ice cold, no tweets, no interviews, no spin. Just total unnerving silence. No outbursts, no noise. Just a quiet storm, closing in tight, strategic, locked in like a sniper. It wasn't the silence of retreat. It was the silence that signals danger, the kind that makes powerful people sweat without a single word spoken. One ABC executive, visibly shaken, reportedly leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "It's like she's already won, and we're just waiting for the paperwork." The crisis team kept chasing updates. Executives kept ducking. Why? Because there was nothing good to report. Each day brought new liabilities. Each hour, a fresh leak mills, raw footage, Slack messages, internal notes. It didn't stop, and none of it looked good. Legal started floating the idea. Settle quietly, pay her. Seal the perms, make it disappear. But PR slammed the brakes. If we pay her off, they warned, we're basically yelling we're guilty to the entire world. Then came the real fear. What if Karoline says no? This wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was a full-scale war, and ABC. They were losing minute by minute, headline by headline. By the time the hosts were finally brought into the loop, the damage was already done. The receipts were out. The fallout was already hitting. These were the same women who once laughed Karoline off the stage, rolled their eyes backstage, brushed it off like noise. Now they were watching the empire crack beneath their feet. Whoopi Goldberg was livid. She didn't walk into that emergency meeting, she stormed in, fresh off set, makeup half done, towel in hand. She didn't sit. She didn't wait. We're seriously thinking about cutting a deal with her, she snapped. Executives scrambled. They tried explaining the emails, the video, the producer notes, but none of it mattered anymore, because now the truth was out. And if even one producer admitted fault, this wasn't just bad press, it was a full-blown network meltdown.
Pretends to be a champion of women until they find one who is a conservative. Once that happens, they love nothing more than tearing down women with the most petty and vacuous of insults.
But Whoopi wasn't having it. She slammed her hand on the table. "We're making her look like a hero," she snapped, her voice slicing through the room. "You think Twitter's bad? Wait until they find out we paid her off." The room went electric. Then Joy Behar jumped in, her tone sharper than usual. "We built this show," she hissed. "We carried this network through elections, scandals, shutdowns, and now we fold over one lawsuit." The words landed hard. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Sunny Hostin, the legal mind at the table, the one who always had a spin, a strategy, an out. But this time, she said nothing. No rebuttal, no reassurance. She simply slid the printed lawsuit back across the table and, in a voice barely above a whisper, said, "She has enough to go to court." That single sentence changed everything. This wasn't just about The View anymore. Sunny looked up, her expression unreadable. "If this goes public," she added, "it won't just be about us. It'll be about the entire network, and everyone." In the room understood exactly what that meant. Years of internal decisions, ignored warnings, and unchecked behavior dragged into the spotlight. Whoopi leaned in, eyes sharp. "You're saying we should apologize?" Sunny didn't answer. She didn't have to. Deep down, they all knew that might be the only card left to play, and that truth was the most terrifying thing in the room. That morning, when the cameras turned on, everything looked the same. Same set, same faces, same lighting, but everything felt different. The smiles were stiff. The energy was off. The usual playful chaos was replaced by a cold, heavy tension. There were no jokes, no clever banter, just silence hanging over the table like a storm cloud. Whoopi sat still, hands clenched in front of her. Her trademark smirk, gone. She looked directly into the camera, took a long, steady breath, and said softly, "Things have gotten a little out of hand. Maybe it's time we take a step back." Just that one line low, careful and Hevel left viewers stunned. This wasn't the usual Whoopi. This wasn't a segment. This wasn't performance. This was something else entirely. Then came Joy Behar, normally the first to deflect with sarcasm, but today her voice cracked. She didn't look amused. She looked rattled.